Okay, let's take a closer look at malware, viruses, worms, different kinds of threats, and vulnerabilities. So let's look at there are some sites you can look at. Real-time global attack maps, kind of interesting to look at, when you have some time. I'm not going to test you on that, but that's just something that you should know about. It's kind of interesting. And then there's different kinds of malware. We'll go through these in detail. Other kinds of vulnerabilities that are not really malware that gets, it's just vulnerabilities that can introduce problems for you. And then password attacks themselves, specifically password attacks. Let's look at these. So again, look at these sites when you get a chance, but they're kind of interesting. They show you real time. They have software that's being used by various managed security service providers, MSSPs we talked about earlier. So managed security service provider, MSSP, will help monitor your network and put some software on it, manage what's going on. And when you have thousands of customers using your software as an MSSP, you're collecting all that information and you can display it on a map on your website to sort of show visitors where these attacks are coming from throughout the world. APTs are very specific because APTs, advanced persistent threat, on these sites, sometimes you'll see a little APT sign come up. And what that's saying is that this is a very professional, usually a nation state, a country, China, Eastern European country, or the United States, trying to place a very advanced kind of attack that hides and runs just to spy. It just doesn't try to damage anything, doesn't try to corrupt any data. It just tries to spy on your company, collect intellectual property, whatever it is they want to monitor. So they hide very deep in your system, hard to find. They don't try to damage anything. They want to stay hidden because they want to spy. So you might want to look at these sites when you get a chance. They're kind of interesting. FireEye is a good one. There's a number of good ones. So there's adware. Let's talk about different kinds of malware. Okay, adware is what it sounds like. It's advertising. You get these pop-ups, just sort of annoying. Not more than that. Spyware can be a problem because spyware could be tracking a place. It could be a key logger. It could be logging all of your keystrokes, including your passwords. Spyware could also just look to see what sites you go to. If you're a big company like Apple, and this happened to Apple actually, hackers could not get into Apple, but they put spyware on to see where they buy their lunch, and they infect a delicatessen or a local grocery store where they buy their lunch from. But they don't know that unless they spy on you. So the spyware collects that. They infect that place where your program is and your workers shop, and then when they visit that shop, they get infected. So it's a whole nother sort of discussion. A virus is what you probably know what a virus is. It's usually received through an email. It's going to infect your files. There are various kinds of viruses. Some damage things, some encrypt your files, called ransomware. They'll encrypt your files and want you to pay in bitcoins for the key to decrypt, right? So now you know about encryption, decryption, and keys and such. So without paying, you don't get a key. So you really need to have backups. You should not be paying these attackers for a key to decrypt. You really should have backups, restore to your backup, and not pay. But viruses can do lots of different things. That's a more common one today, ransomware. Worms are specialized viruses because they can go through your system without any human intervention. Somebody has to do something to introduce a virus, right? You've got to click on an email. You've got to open up an attachment. You have to do something to get that virus introduced to your organization. Worms don't work like that. A worm can get into your system and go from server to server, machine to machine all on its own. Hence, it's called a worm. Trojans is a category of emails that come in generally, like a birthday card, something that looks friendly. I might be passing around a new kind of birthday card or a new 4th of July card or something, and I don't know, hidden in that image or hidden in that video or somewhere in that email, there's some malware in there. And it looks like it's fine, but it's a Trojan. It's carrying something that's a problem. Rats, remote access tools, are obviously a problem. They can remotely access and control, sometimes even control what's happening in your system. If that's buried in a Trojan, that's a problem. It's a big problem. Rootkits are very problematic also. Everything's a problem, I guess, really. But these are very dangerous because they hide very deep in your system, in the kernel of your operating system, and it'll run before your antivirus system runs. It runs before your operating system boots up fully. So these rootkits are very dangerous. They can hide from antivirus because they can disable your antivirus. They can potentially change your antivirus. So rootkits, there are ways to find these and, no pun intended, but root them out. But they're obviously dangerous things. And backdoors are in applications and software. They could be intentionally put there by vendors who need to troubleshoot a product that's broken, and the customer has no access to the product. They can use a backdoor to get into the product. And then sometimes they're unintentional, that they're just vulnerabilities that were some poorly coded application that has a backdoor. So when a backdoor is discovered, either unintentional or intentional, then hackers have fun with it, exchanging with other hackers to take advantage of these vulnerabilities. So logic bombs are just, this could be something a disgruntled employee places in an organization before they leave. It goes off at a certain date. It's a virus or a worm that hides in the system. Could be an APT. It sits there that doesn't. They know they're going to resign in 6 months. This logic bomb goes off in 7 months or after they're gone, or 8 months. So it's a problem, and I think this happens often when there's intellectual property being stolen. Sometimes companies hire individuals who are sophisticated IT folks. They want them on their team, but they actually work for a foreign national, and they want to get access to your company to put out logic bomb or an APT that's going to resurrect itself at some point in time after they leave the company. Botnets are generally an attacker has command and control server, and they infect a number of other devices. It could be PCs. It could be Wi-Fi thermostats. Amazon was attacked that way through thermostat pings, a flood of pings, basically just a little transaction that asks some information about your server. And this flood, can bring a server down, crash it, or make it unusable because it's being used by so many bots that a real customer can't get to your server anymore. The victim server is flooded. So these bots, this is a distributed denial of service because the attack comes from a distribution of bots that are attacking the victim. And as I say, Amazon was brought down because this botnet included not just servers and PCs, but thousands of thermostats also. So that's another problem. Internet of Things, they're much more easily sort of penetrated and attacked, and can be used in a botnet to attack a victim. Ransomware we talked about a little bit earlier, right? Ransomware is a kind of virus, and it's specific in the sense that they're trying to encrypt your files and trying to extort dollars from you in terms of Bitcoin. It's less trackable. And again, people are highly advised not to pay it. Hospitals, municipalities, banks, of course, are always a target, but many hospitals, smaller systems, and municipalities do not have strong encryption. I guess one of the more famous ones a couple of years ago was the city of Baltimore was pretty much shut down for over a week. I think they actually paid the hacker because they couldn't get into motor vehicle files. You couldn't get a license, you couldn't register a car, you couldn't register a title to a new home you purchased. The city was really shut down. Ransomware is a big problem, growing problem, probably the biggest, kind of attack out there now. Polymorphic malware is something that changes. It's a kind of virus or worm that changes over time. So it's difficult to detect, difficult to, if you have antivirus software, it may not find this because it's been changed. The malware has been changed a little bit. It may use a different port. It may use a different IP address. It's using different pieces that makes its signature a little bit different, right? The antivirus software has signature detection. There's a signature or certain patterns and certain characteristics of a virus it looks for. But if you're changing it slightly, then it's harder to detect. So they call those polymorphic. Each time it's installed, it's a little bit different. Armored viruses go through a number of different techniques to sort of protect the virus from from being detected. So it could be encrypted. It could have useless code wrapped around it. So when you're trying to figure out what this virus is doing, it's very difficult to figure out because there's this garbage code that doesn't do anything, or does some steps that are not necessary, and it obfuscates what's happening. So it hides the virus in terms of what it is by encrypting it, and it hides any reverse engineering where someone's trying to figure out what this virus is doing. It's harder to figure out what it's doing to stop it. It takes longer to disassemble, research, and write an antivirus signature. So they do armor them in different ways. And there's combinations, right? It could be polymorphic. It could be a ransomware that's polymorphic, that's armored. So it could be a combination of things. And phishing, very common. You can put a little joke in here to kind of break up your day. So you might want to read this. It's kind of a cute little Dilbert. When you get a chance, you can just pause me and watch it. So phishing is when these bogus emails come to you. It could be, it looks like it came from your bank, Bank of America, or Citibank, or Amazon, or some site, and they use the logos. They mimic the site very closely, and there are different ways to sort of detect it. If you do not click on the link on the email that you received, but just hover over it, you'll see at the bottom of the email there'll be probably a URL, https:// something that'll be different, a little different. It'll look odd. It won't be a Bank of America site, or it might have those words in it with other words mixed in. So there are ways to detect it, but phishing is a problem because they'll send this out to lots of folks, lots of employees in one company, or thousands of companies essentially. And they'll have, they call it social engineering. There's a lot of different types of social engineering. There's even hackers use social engineering, so to be clear, and there's even software to help you do social engineering properly. And they'll imply some sort of sense of urgency. We need you to log on today. We need you to check something. We need to update your address file was corrupted. You need to log on. And when you click on this bogus link, you're giving your ID and password to the hacker who sent out this phishing email. Spear phishing is when they're sending phishing attacks to particular individuals. They may have already done some social engineering with that person. They've customized the email because they know that person now. They have had some exposure to them, some either through phone calls or through other employees. So that's spear phishing. Whaling is when they're attacking a specific target, but it's a CEO or CFO, an executive in a company. So there's phishing, a couple of variations. Spear phishing for certain individuals, and whaling when they're trying to, a common one that I've seen myself in companies where it looks like it's the CFO is asking the CEO to transfer some dollars, transfer some funds, and they usually, it looks suspicious because unless they've had some conversation, it seems out of the blue. But and they send out thousands of these kinds of emails. They might get one. That's all they need is one that clicks on it and goes forward. Well, you all know about spam. I guess 80% of all email is spam. You don't see a lot of it because the email's cloud-based services that you're using, whether it's Gmail or Yahoo or AOL or whatever you use, or your corporate, it might be using Microsoft 365, which has it built in, or if you're running Outlook in your own organization for email and you're not using Microsoft's cloud, which is getting more rare, you subscribe to Barracuda and they'll do the spam investigation for you. And they do different things. They have blacklists to stop all spams from certain locations, certain IP addresses that are coming in. And they can filter on certain words. I mean, I've done this myself in certain companies. Stop emails that come in, trap them. They say fund transfer because you're getting emails that look like they were coming from the CEO asking for the CFO, the chief executive officer asking the chief financial officer to transfer some funds around. And I'd rather trap those and look at them and then ask those parties, is this legitimate? Is this something you're trying to accomplish, or was this spam? So there are different ways to block it, and lots of it gets blocked. And obviously, annual privacy and security awareness training. Employees need to have training every year on security, remind them about phishing, test them. You can send test emails. IT security departments have often sent out their own phishing emails to try to see if all their employees are judicious enough not to click on it. But you might get 1 or 2 employees who click on the link in this phishing email that was sent by IT. And then obviously they need to be re-educated. They've done something which could have been a problem if it was a hacker that sent the email, but it's internal. It's IT sending the email to test individuals, their awareness. Password attacks. Our final. Hold on 1 second here. I'm going to just pause this for a second. So, password attacks. There are brute force password attacks, which is trying many combinations of passwords to get in. I put a little cartoon here to just sort of kind of an open sesame. This is the old kind of password where letters were mixed in with words to make it difficult for a hacker. But the new NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, is recommending that you don't do that, that you can just use words in a long phrase that's at least 12 characters. But brute force is really just trying to figure out different combinations to break in. There's a dictionary attack, which basically feeds brute force attack based on dictionaries, words, phrases that are common. Something that hackers know people do. The password has to change every season, basically every 90 days. So they'll have summer 2020. When fall comes, they'll have fall 2020. And there are words like that, common combinations that they'll try to break in with. So never use the season and the year. That's a problem. You'll probably lose your security and your privacy that way if you use it. And then there are hybrid attacks. Use both dictionary and brute force. Birthday attacks are when it's a little complicated, but it's when 2 passwords are hashed. We talked about hashes earlier in a different module. We talked about how passwords get hashed. It's rare, but 2 different terms when they get hashed can have the same 2 different words and phrases can have the same hash value. So sometimes with a different value, they can get into your system, different password value, because the hash is the same. That's another conversation. And then there are rainbow tables. So hackers have these tables of all these hashed values, millions of them. They steal all your hash values because they're all encrypted, your passwords. And they steal your passwords that are all encrypted, your IDs that are encrypted. They try to match them up with these rainbow tables that they sell and trade and collect and build. And if they get a match, they have no idea what the password is, but they know the hash, so they get in by submitting the hash. So that concludes our final module, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation as well.